compare this to the financial markets as well.
Absolutely. You've got a perfect illustration of this two-class society of serfs who can't afford decent food and are becoming either obese or starving to death, versus those like a Warren Buffett, for example, who game the system, trade on inside information, manipulate the markets, who are making the economy in the U.S. less competitive by monopolizing and taking companies off the market. And, of course, he doesn't have a problem sourcing beef or food, but everyone that he's destroying with his predatory monopolist behavior and insider trading and market manipulation, they can't get a decent hamburger anymore, and he's laughing all the way to wherever he goes to get his schwing, schwing, schwa, schwa.
And then, you know, as you mentioned, the food stamp usage is increasing rapidly in America. And despite this, here you see the inflation in the fact that even though people are receiving more food stamps, they're unable to even shop at Walmart. A scary reality about Walmart's customers: they're broke. So as we know, Walmart shares plunged on Friday, last Friday, when an internal email was leaked in which Cameron Geiger, a VP at the company, asked, where are all the customers and where is their money? So they don't even have enough money to shop at Walmart, which is already selling all this mystery meat product. Where do they go from there if they can't even afford mystery meat?
Well, Walmart has always been a poison chalice, as we've talked about for years. For every dollar somebody saves at Walmart, they lose $2 in wages. Eventually, they won't be able to even afford to shop at Walmart. So they've boxed themselves into an unproductive disenfranchisement or enslavement or serfdom to somebody called Walmart, who, if you add all their wealth together, the Walmart family, it's the wealthiest family in America. They got wealthy by imposing a neo-feudalism in America. And now these people are finally waking up to the fact that, hey, you know what? We're now entering the prison industrial complex as cogs in the prison machine because Walmart screwed us badly.
And then finally, U.S. homeowners are repeating their mistakes. So these are the chumps in America that still have a few little pennies left to their name. And if there's one thing Americans should have learned from the recession, it's the importance of diversifying risk. Middle-class households had too much of their net worth tied up in their homes and were too exposed to stocks through 401ks and other investments. So this study looked at the holdings of Americans, and 3/4 of their wealth is tied up in only stocks in their houses. And they consider this very high risk. This is considered very high risk. These people are lined up to be slaughtered, not sheared.
Well, Alan Greenspan said just recently that he doesn't look at jobs, he doesn't look at wages, he only looks at the stock market to determine whether or not policies at the Fed are successful or not. So what he's saying is that everyone in America is a gambleaholic, everyone is their own personal hedge fund, everyone deserves to have their net worth stolen periodically from the likes of Warren Buffett and others, and that's just their tough luck. The idea of having a job that creates savings, that creates capital, that creates free markets, Alan Greenspan is saying we don't like that anymore. We just want a gulag casino.
But if you look at the charts that they provide here, in 1983, Americans, the average American, had a more diversified portfolio, including business equity and cash was a large part of their holdings. 83, it shoots up to now this precarious situation they're in. Of course, exactly when Alan Greenspan arrived, exactly when CNBC arrived, to propagandize these people and brainwash them into thinking they should concentrate their wealth in the stock market, where it could be slaughtered by the like. You lend out your money, you lease it to the bankers who are going to return it to you even healthier and better than before. Of course, that doesn't happen. And they say houses make up a smaller share of the wealth of a rich family. The wealthy also benefit from better financial advice.
Yes, well, the sacred cows have become the horsey Findusburgers, haven't they? Stacey Herbert, thanks so much for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you, Max.
All right, stay tuned for the second half. I'll be speaking to H-Boss whistleblower Paul R. Moore. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Paul Moore, a former risk regulator who blew the whistle on H-Boss and is now trying to fix the financial world, making it a safer place for the taxpayer. Paul Moore, welcome back to the Keiser Report.
Yeah, good to be back. How are you, Max?
Excellent. Paul Moore, the FSA is in the news, this time the Food Standards Agency, for failing to actually regulate food standards. There's a remarkable similarity to the failure of the Financial Services Authority, the other FSA, in that whistleblowers were ignored and ignorance feigned on the fraud being made public. Your thoughts on both these FSA scandals?
how stupid can you be to call yourself the FSA twice? I mean, that causes confusion in the first place. And the other thing I noticed was that the politicians say they'll throw the full force of the law against the horse meat corrupt people, but they couldn't be bothered to do it when it came to the actual biggest thing, which was the financial crisis. So it just proves that ultimately the people with the money can protect themselves from virtually anything.
People understand that eating dodgy meat that's unregulated has potential to harm them, and it's, of course, fraud. But people don't understand that eating dodgy securities, eating a dodgy bailout or a collateralized debt obligation, they have the perception that it's a victimless crime. You hear that phrase all the time, but that's not true, is it, Paul?
Not at all. I said this last time I was on. United Nations have estimated that the financial crisis drove 100 million people back into abject poverty. Lots of people die when they're in abject poverty. And I've estimated that the financial crisis probably killed more people than any conflict since the Second World War. So it's not victimless. And even those people who don't die become miserable.
Paul Moore, let's talk about costs for a second, because clearly in the food area, trying to reintroduce integrity into the food chain means costs are going to go up, and go up pretty dramatically. Similarly, in the financial sector, we always hear the argument made that, well, we are deregulating these economies in the banking system because we're going to save you money by making access to capital cheaper, and they use this cost argument. But in both cases, costs are rising. The cost of food is going up, and of course, all the money used to paper over the crimes in the financial system are now resulting in inflation around the world in energy and food and other areas, exactly going back to the horse meat scandal. So that idea of a cheaper, more efficient system is completely false as well, Paul, correct?
The reality is the cost of the financial crisis has outweighed, I don't know the exact statistic, but decades worth of tax. So it actually didn't solve the problem. Let me just say something, okay? The way the corporate system works is so corrupt that there is now absolutely clear evidence that the people who end up at the top of the boardrooms have 3 times the psychopathic attribute of the standard individual in society. In other words, we put people in charge of large, societally important organizations, whether they be food companies, supermarkets, financial sector organizations, banks, or what have you. Look at the nicknames, right? You've got the Gorilla, that was Dick Fuld of Lehman Brothers. The Knife was the nickname of the chief executive of Morgan Stanley. Alf was the nickname of the chief executive of Credit Suisse. That stands for arrogant little f***er. I don't know whether you had to put that on your program. The system is rotten. There is something rotten in the state of Denmark, and there's quite a few things we need to do. But we can't do them because the vested interest is run by the people with money. So we're in a bloody muddle.
Paul Moore, let's talk about the intersection between food prices, financial fraud, and psychopaths. And I want to talk about Barclays Bank for a second. They were caught rigging LIBOR. They've been caught involved in a number of financial scandals. They recently came out and said that they're going to step away from speculating in the agricultural commodities business, as are a few other banks, because now it's become clear that the psychopathic banker that you describe, which is endemic in the system, goes out there and they drive the price of food up to astronomical highs, even though it means poverty, widespread poverty, or